my hair? Never mind.
What hair?
Greetings, welcome to the SciFi Pubcast, the podcast that tries to be a pub and perhaps someday a pub that tries to be a podcast. And as always, we are looking for customers to visit our bar. So if you're passionate about something, want to be on a podcast, well, let us know, because this bar is all about community, in good times and in not so good times. My name is Joel, and I'm the owner of the SciFi Pubcast, so to speak, and I have, look around. In my bar, I have my two trusted staff members. I have Carrie Simpson with us. How you doing, Carrie?
You said you have two trusted staff members? I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know. I'm dropping the ball nowadays.
The other one is kind of suspect. But
yeah,
okay.
That's a true point. And of course, the other one we're talking about is Derek Beebe. And since we're recording this call by Skype with video for the most part, Derek, man, why do you have like a mask on, like a
because I don't trust you two.
Why is that? Like, come on, you know, like we're not even in the same physical location. We're doing this. We do our show by Skype.
Yeah,
you're really breaking the fourth wall of the concept of the bar existing as a physical space and time.
Well, it could start. Just drink
it's
more.
A virtual bar.
It makes more sense for tequila. Come on.
So you can't catch anything over Skype?
Computer virus.
Yeah. Like, what about computer viruses?
Those aren't human transmitted contagions. If we could catch something through the interwebs that would kill us, as in, like, you know, pneumonia or something, we'd all be fucked.
All right, I'll take off my Norton mask then.
Okay. Actually, Derek, on second thought, can you put it back on?
Yeah, put it back on. In fact, maybe if you could just put a bag over your head, that might help.
We're so cruel. We also have a customer in the bar. My God, he's been on the show before, Mr. Mike Clark, all the way from Maryland, USA. How you doing, Mike?
Thanks for having me, Joel. It's great to be back. Looking forward to having some good drinks. Probably pass on the food, but yeah.
Yeah, so we know a bit about you because we're friends, and I met you several times. That's different Star Wars celebrations. How is this whole COVID-19 lockdown working for you?
Well, I thought I was going to get caught up on lots of Star Wars novels and, you know, all kinds of other to-do lists and tasks. But surprisingly, I think I found myself busier working from home while also teaching my children. More so than perhaps even more so than when I was even at the office. So it's kind of freaky, but I'm exhausted mentally every day. I'm enjoying this weekend, let me tell you.
Very good. Carrie, how are you doing down in Los Angeles?
We're good. I've been working at home since like Wednesday. I haven't left except to, you know, take out the trash and check the mail. I haven't been outside since Tuesday night, which is fine. I mean, I've always been a bit of a shut-in anyway. You know, the cave is on lockdown, pretty much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Derek, man, what's happening in Pennsylvania with you?
Well, I'm an essential employee at a bank, so I'm still going into work every day. So my life actually hasn't changed that much. Instead of watching TV with my friend in person, we watch TV over Skype. So not that much is really different. It's actually pretty clever. You just both have to hit play on the show at the exact same time. And then you kind of have to like pause for a half second here and there to get perfectly in sync. And then it's like you're in the same room watching TV together.
Ah, lovely. Yes. You know,
that sounds complicated, but okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's just like 1, 2, 3.
You know, I haven't actually been to a physical bar in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
But Joel, have you been sober for 2 weeks?
No, of course not, because I was smart.
I
saw this crisis coming, and I stocked up on my my wine rack, so to speak, and my beer.
Oh
supply.
yeah.
So,
I have like a dozen. I have a dozen bottles of wine. I think I should be okay for at least another month.
Yeah, I spent several $100s on wine about 2 weeks ago, so I'm good to go.
Why you would spend that much?
Our local German restaurant actually opened up with a new license temporary to go deliver beer. So we decided to go to help support the local business. We took a takeout order, or I'm sorry, delivery order, and they actually brought beer to our house. So I had a really nice raspberry, what was it? It was like almost like a raspberry Hefeweizen style type of beer. And it was really good. So then sadly, after 3 days after that, they closed up. So I guess they weren't able to sustain that business model for too long. But
I know, and I'm calling from, well, I'm living right now in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I'm actually from Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. I was spending a lot of time in places like Toronto and London, Ontario. But our local craft brewers, and there's a ton in Ottawa, they're doing the same thing. I just haven't had the need to actually order beer yet. That day may come, I can tell you that.
Yeah, apparently there are a couple of places in LA where that will deliver mixed drinks to you, but you have to order food.
Food. Who needs food?
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
But not anything that comes out of our kitchen, because I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I got food.
Yeah, there
If
you
you want it.
I don't even want to know, dude.
Yeah, let's see. What's happening with Joel? Me? Well, I've been working from home mostly. I've been going to the office on occasion. And, of course, hey, you okay, Carrie? You just
Yeah.
coughed? Okay, just making sure. Okay?
Yeah.
We have to take care of
This
each other.
is the same cough I've had since I got sick in February. So it has nothing to do with what's going around right now.
Fair enough. Yes, so what else is happening in my life? Yeah, I had to shave my beard off, and I was growing back for like a week, and then I had to shave that off, so I'm very clean shaving. I'm looking like Lex Luthor right now. I don't particularly like it. And it's all because of work. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If I'd vote for you if you ran for president.
Listen, let's not talk about politics, but this current guy in the States,
yeah.
I have nothing good to say about him, so there we go. Okay.
Please, God.
Let's move on. So before we go down that certain rabbit hole, which we
Thank
can never climb back up from. Derek, how is our kitchen doing in these trying times? Is it still open?
Yes, I've been drenching everything in bleach, but I don't think that's going to really change the way things tasted anyway. And for this week's special, I present to you Stinky Snips. They are Slim Jims soaked in fish juice for an hour and served at lukewarm room temperature.
Wow.
Fish.
Okay.
they still smell better than Java.
I don't even want to know what I'm not even going there.
Because I always figured that's what Java would taste like if you licked them.
Yes. Thankfully, you haven't done any food.
Well, depending which part of him you're licking, but.
I'm gonna be sick.
Let's just move on there, because I got nothing to add to this. Our beer drink restaurant podcast recommendation. Well, we're currently on lockdown, so guess what, guys? There isn't one. Stay home, drink tap water, or crack open your liquor cabinets, because these are interesting times we're living in. Well, what's the buzz phase? We're living through history right now, and yeah, that can be interesting. But enough of this whole COVID-19 business. I know it's a bit catchy, but we're talking about Star Wars. Yeah, I love my puns.
Wow.
We're talking about
that was epic. That was epically bad. Thank you, Joel.
Anytime. But yes, folks, we're talking about Star Wars, The Clone Wars. So, let's see. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, on the planet Tatooine, a crazy old hermit wizard-type guy named Ben had a conversation with a young and quite annoying farm boy by the name of Luke. When, for the first time in the history of the Star Wars franchise, the Clone Wars were mentioned. Yes, I'm talking about 1977. It was that long ago. Do you feel old yet? Because I do. Wait, sorry, I do digress there because, I got some issues in my life. Moving on. So for decades, Star Wars fans were waiting for the events of the Clone Wars to be told and explained. And then in 2003...
Wait, Joel, go back to the whole do you feel old thing. What are you trying to say, dude?
Well, I'm older than you, Carrie.
Yeah, but thank you once again for reminding me how old I am.
Oh God! I should have cracked open the tequila.
I know. You can't win. Sorry.
Terrible. But you can relate in the sense that for decades we've been waiting for the Clone Wars to actually, what is a Clone Wars? So what are the Clone Wars, right? So, Lucasfilm, 2003, released this animated TV series on the Cartoon Network. It was animated. It was hand-drawn. And it was okay. It was kind of funky. I know you can still find it. But what really started the Clone Wars was in 2008, Lucasfilm released a new CGI version, which is still very much with us today. In fact, you can watch it on Disney+, and Season 7 is wrapping up over the next few months. Yes, clones fighting wars. We like the premise. And it's part of Star Wars history. So let's talk about it, guys. Oh, wow, that was a lot. Let's throw it over to Mike because he's our guest/customer. Mike, what's your overall impressions of the Clone Wars?
Well, it was very timely with your topic today because we have just finished doing a full rewatch chronologically of the Clone Wars at the family. It's one of the few things we had time to do on our imposed quarantine lockdown. So we have been since about, I think, maybe about middle of January. I think we started with the movie, 2 episodes, and then the movie if you do chronological order. And so we've just caught up to all the new ones that Disney Plus released this past Friday. So we have now seen everything. So I've got it fresh in my head. But it was the first time my kids have ever seen it because they by the time they were born, it was, I think Rebels was going, and they've watched Resistance and Forces of Destiny, but they never had a chance to really watch Clone Wars, and they love it. Let me tell you, everything is all about Clone Wars right now. All the Legos, all the games they're playing, everything is Clone Wars. And I remembered quite a lot about it that there's definitely parts that I had missed. There's some episodes I had never seen since the first airing. And I really had a bigger appreciation for that whole story and scope. But one thing I always liked about it from the start was that it was more of an anthology series. I really liked that you saw all these different characters, whether it be the Jedi, some of the Senate and the politicians, even the villains. You got to see different shades and perspectives from them too. Some of these episodes were strictly all villains, and you didn't even deal with the protagonist characters at all. But you got to see all these different pockets throughout the Star Wars galaxy, and the little bits that the prequels touched on when they kind of showed you that larger galaxy. This just blew it out of the water as far as going into all kinds of different areas and concepts and things, some of which I guess people who were familiar with Legends kind of knew about and had been reading about for years. But for a lot of people, this was like their first exposure, especially the next generation of fans. And it was pretty neat to see that kind of unfold visually and see all these different stories and the arcs they did. You had some stuff that got really dark. You had some other things that were quite lighthearted and quite humorous. And it was kind of all over the place in that regard. I know some don't like that, but I really found rewatching all these seasons, even the first season, I enjoyed, for the most part, most of those episodes a lot.
Hey, Mike, how old are your kids?
So they are 6. Like I said, I've got triplets, so they just turned 6 in January. And they're definitely at a good age to watch this. Maybe slightly younger for some. Some might prefer to wait on this, but I thought it was a pretty good age. This is when I was first introduced to Star Wars myself. They've of course seen the films and such, but they liked Resistance and those types of shows. But I really think for some reason this one must have really connected with them. They loved a lot of the characters. They love Master Plo Koon is one of their favorites. Of course, Ahsoka, because who doesn't love Ahsoka now, at least?
Now, anyway.
She wasn't quite so popular when she first came out, but I always enjoyed the character. And then they like, I'm trying to remember a couple of the other. They love Master Fisto, Kit Fisto. They love a lot of the different Jedi Council members. They just love to get to see all those different characters interacting. I don't think they remember what happens in Revenge of the Sith. So when the series ends in a few more weeks, we will probably watch that at the end, and I'll see what the reaction is when they.
So can you do therapy by Zoom? That's my question for you. So
sure.
After they finish watching Revenge of the Sith. So okay,
you might need that. That's
awesome. Love that. Carrie, what's your overall take on the Clone Wars?
Well, it took me a long time to get into it. I didn't see the original movie when it came out, and I didn't have cable at the time. I eventually managed to binge all of seasons 1 through 5, and then when 6 came out, obviously season 6, and now that I have Disney Plus now, so I've obviously been watching the new season, which I love. And I just I like all of the minutia it gets into. I of course love the Kit Fisto is awesome. Nylons are just kind of just look cool. Um, and yeah, it's been great. I did get a bit confused by how, like, at least the first couple of seasons, nothing was in order. And eventually I do want to watch it in chronological order when I find the time. But who knows? Maybe I'll have the time now that I'm homebound for, the foreseeable future.
Interesting. By the way, before we move on, we have a new rule here at the pub. Each time you touch your face, you have to drink. Okay, and I kind of stole that joke from elsewhere. Yeah, the Walt Disney World News Tonight, folks. Yeah, that's kind of what they have. But still, yeah, let's do that.
If my mom is watching,
on your face to kill the virus.
If my mom's watching, she'll probably thank you.
There you go. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Oh, the eye roll was amazing, Carrie.
Thank you.
Anytime.
And Carrie, you mentioned chronological order too. I would say the one benefit I found with that is, especially with the clone characters, it definitely helped follow their story and trajectory watching it chronologically, especially because now you see in season 7 we're seeing the Bad Batch arc. So it was very interesting to kind of take note of all these clones at the beginning of the story then follow that journey. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Derek, what's your take before we dive into this topic even more?
I am a massive Clone Wars fan. I have been from the beginning. I also love the 2003 microseries by Tartakovsky, if that's how you say his name. I mean, obviously, it's not completely realistic. It's so over the top, but I just loved it. I mean, you finally got to see Jedi being like these invincible badasses, like they always, made the legend of seeming. But yeah, I love the series. I saw the 2008 movie in the theater, unlike anyone else. And because for me, Clone Wars is just as important as the movies, because after 2005, that was it. Clone Wars was the #1 Star Wars product because there were going to be no more movies. So in my mind, and especially back then, Clone Wars is just as important as the movies. And it did a wonderful job of filling in the problems of the prequels. I mean, I love the prequels. I'll always defend them, but I also acknowledge they have a lot of problems with them, including making Anakin such a whiny and likable character. So it's wonderful that this series is a chance to redeem Anakin's character, to actually make him fun and likable before his fall, so that now you care more when he turns evil, because he's not just like this unlikable sop. And I love Ahsoka. She's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. I didn't love her at first. I didn't hate her. I didn't find her as annoying as other people did. She was just kind of there for me. But we got to see her, grow up as we grew up. And the character that she ended up being in Rebels and at the end of Clone Wars was so wonderful. So while she was a bit of an annoying kid at first, it's amazing to see her character development and what she became. Because out of all the characters in the Clone Wars, she was the one who could have a true arc. Because Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme, we all know what happened to them. They couldn't do much with them character-wise. But Ahsoka was someone who could change, who could die. We were all wondering, is Ahsoka going to get killed off because that's why she's not in Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, I was cheering for that in the first season, so.
And obviously, the show has had its ups and downs. I think being an anthology series was both a blessing and a curse, because on the one hand, it was great to get to see all these different characters and perspectives of the Clone Wars. It made the galaxy just seem so much bigger and more epic than it ever was before, because Revenge of the Sith did an amazing job of doing that, because there's like 20 planets in Revenge of the Sith, and you see all these battles taking place on them all. But up to that point, up to Attack of the Clones coming out, you would only see, 3 planets at a time. So this just really made the world seem so much bigger and the franchise expand in such a huge way. And wow, I completely lost my train of thought. So now there's a lot of wonderful episodes in it. There's also a lot of bad episodes in it. There's, like that season 5 arc with the droids in the desert. That's the real bottom of the barrel. And this is...
Oh, we love that
kind
episode.
It was good. It was the
God, I did not like
Kemi
those
and
episodes.
Diarte. Come on, that's the term they use. Okay, it's been around for like 800 years. Okay.
And
I think the only bottom episodes that I found where it was like kind of not a struggle to get through, but you were kind of like, yeah, I'd say maybe there might have been a couple in season 1 perhaps, but I know everyone hates that droid arc in season 5, but I actually, because it's so out there compared to where the story had been going up to that point, but I actually thought it was cute.
It was a nice change of pace.
Agreed.
It would have been okay if it was one episode, but when you do it over 4, it just drug on and on and on.
Yeah, it did droid on, so yeah.
That was one of the problems that I had with the show. When they started off, they were mostly single episodes, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. But I think it was in season 3 or 4, they settled into that 4-episode arc format. And I didn't like that because some episodes deserved 4 episodes, but there were a lot that should have just been 2 or 3, and it just really felt like they were just killing time just to hit that 4-episode count, that droid arc being the most notable example. So I love so much about Clone Wars, but it did have some things that frustrated me. Which season is that you're holding up, Joel?
Well, I actually have 5
seasons.
5. I got season 5, but I have 5 of the 7 seasons on hard formats, so yeah, it's
nice.
been around. Well, let's see. My take on it is I hated the first season. I watched the first couple episodes, and I thought to myself, why, it's Star Wars. Star Wars shouldn't be animated unless you're a kid, and I wasn't a kid. But then I waited and went to a Star Wars Celebration, 102 of them. And about season 3, I decided to catch up and watch them. And I think by season 3, I think the Clone Wars really hit its stride. I quite enjoyed because they were stopped doing stories for the most part for kids, and they were writing Star Wars for adults, but in a CGI animated version of it. And I think some of the characters are outstanding. I think sometimes it works so well, other times not so much. Like, for instance, who can't like my favorite character in the Clone Wars, who went to Rebels and he's now in Disneyland and Disney World, Hondo Onoka.
Oh yeah,
yeah, the pirate.
I thought you were gonna say Captain Rex for a second, and then
no, Hondo.
Wait, Rex isn't at Disneyland.
Yeah, I'm Team Hondo all the way. So.
Yeah, Hondo is great.
Yeah, so I think George Lucas and Dave Filoni and many others have done a great job at doing this series, which is groundbreaking for the time period in terms of animation, CGI, sound effects, and just did a great format to tell these small little snippets of Star Wars stories. And I personally like the arcs, so I like to see character developments, and I like to see major plot twists or plot movements, because that's, to me, I like the plot. I like the big ideas as well as the characterization and the emotional heart tweaking. What do you call it? So, yeah. Wow. Let's see. There's so many ways we can go. What do you guys make of the new season 7? Because there's been 5 episodes being released, or was released to this point when we're recording, and I believe there's, I'm not sure how many more are going to be in the entire season. I think
12
10?
total.
12 total. So we're going to get 7 more episodes, plus the big battle. I forgot, what's the big battle with the
Siege of Mandalore.
The Siege of Mandalore.
Yeah,
Siege of Mandalore,
that's going to
yeah.
be something else. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Who doesn't like
I can't wait
genocide?
for that.
Really? Oh god. So.
It's funny because I never put together all this time that in Revenge of the Sith they mentioned that they just came back from the Outer Rim sieges, and I never put the fact together that when I saw the Bad Batch original celebration peak of the pre-finished version of it, they had talked about the siege at Anaxis, and then they talked about, of course, now Siege of Mandalore. I never really thought about the fact, there were sieges going on at that time. They mentioned that right in Revenge of the Sith.
And also I forget who pointed it out, but it's nice to see Anaxis while it's still mostly intact, because I think they went back to Anaxis in Rebels, didn't they?
Yeah, in season 1. That's where Hera and Sabine went to pick up old supplies, and there were those little creepy crawlers there. And then I think they went back in the season finale or something like that.
Maybe. But yeah, I was like, yeah, it's nice to see, you know, how things looked during the Clone Wars, and then how things looked after the Clone Wars. So that was a nice full circle type thing going on there.
Yeah, the most recent episode that just came out, I won't say what happens in it because in case some people haven't heard it or seen it yet, but there was a bit in there where I was like, hey, wait a minute, you know, and it made me like stop. I was like, that's not the way that's supposed to be. And then you find out it's just you're now seeing a lot more or a different side of something than what you've seen in other Star Wars content.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, okay, you know, that was kind of interesting. It's giving you it's kind of similar to that Anaxis thing where it's like, well, I've seen what it is at this point, but I didn't realize what it used to be in the past, or you know what else was there, you know. So I won't say much more than that. I don't want to give it away, but that caught me for a loop at first. I was like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, perspective, right? Seeing things from a different perspective. It's interesting. Good storytelling there.
I'm really enjoying the Ahsoka arc so far because I've been dying to know what happened to her after she left the Jedi Order. The first set of Bad Batch episodes I wasn't such a fan of because I'm not really a fan of episodes just about the clones. I guess this is an unpopular opinion, but to me, they've never risen above being interchangeable, stereotypical soldiers. I don't really feel anything for them or think they really have any kind of good personality or arc or anything. So whenever an episode starts just them, I kind of groan.
I think I would disagree when it talks at least about the ones besides Rex and Domino's Squad. Those guys seem to, at least because they went through different events. Now, granted, you see the little bits of personality differences in the clones based on D. Bradley Baker's performances, and I thought that was pretty great how he does play off little slight differences to all these people that are identical, at least from a genetic perspective. They each have their own personalities, and while I definitely agree that some people, or I could see that viewpoint that Derek's making, that some people just saw the clones as all kind of the same sort of thing, not a whole lot of difference. But particularly with Fives and Echo from Domino's Squad, I would make the point that they had some interesting arc and development. I think Five's probably the most of the bunch, but when you look at all the episodes that he was in and the stuff he's gone through, when you talk that long form story and the big arcs, those are kind of some of the ones I include, not just of course the Jedi themselves or Ahsoka and the journey that you see some of them go on in growth, but I thought a couple of the clone characters besides Rex. So Rex of course I'm sure we're going to see some growth of him before this thing's over with. But I thought there was a couple of other clone characters that had some interesting moments there to shine, and I think that was kind of an interesting thing. But also thinking about Rebels and where this goes eventually later, not to talk Rebels details, but we know some of the clone characters made their way to Rebels as well. I was kind of surprised thinking back on those characters and looking for them in this series, that they don't really show up that much, at least not as much as I was thinking they were in there originally. So it was kind of funny how they were kind of a couple they picked to showcase in the later series that really didn't have a whole lot in this series. So,
well, this season in particular hasn't really gotten is just starting. My question was, do you think we're actually going to see Rex and some of the other clones taking their chips out before the end of the season? Okay.
I think it'll be the opening of the Siege of Mandalore arc.
You think?
Yeah, I could see that maybe as possibly happening, or at least some kind of scene or dialogue that alludes to it, because since talking about Rebels, I noticed already that in the trailer for the Clone Wars they were showing for the new season, I think they had a quick snippet where you could see Master Depa Billaba, and she's got little Caleb Doom who becomes Kanan in like a hologram image. So I think they're definitely going to add some connective tissue to what they know comes next with Rebels, even though that probably wasn't obviously there in the plans or in the original storyboards or whatever, however far they got with Siege of Mandalore and the pre-production. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had some scenes with the chips and that sort of stuff too, to kind of connect those dots.
Amazing. You know what I really enjoy about the Clone Wars? And it's probably the gateway series that got me into an appreciation for this, is all the voice actors. because
Oh, yeah,
they're
definitely.
always at the different Star Wars celebrations, and I see them perform on stage, and I've walked past them, and I've been in the same room with them, which is, you know, that was another time, really. But actors like Ashley Eichstein, and I may butcher some of these names. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best. But like James Arnold Taylor, Matt Lancer, Tom Kane, D. Bradley Baker, Matthew Wood, like these people are amazing. And I have zero talent for voice acting. I can barely speak English because I tend to stutter and I make some odd noises when I talk. But yeah, just knowing these folks' stories and their other work, and you know, Ashley Eckstein, her business savviness with her clothing line, was it Her Universe? Amazing. What voice actors do you guys really enjoy?
I love Sam Witwer as Maul. He's just amazing.
Right. Yes.
And I love that they brought Mark Hamill in to play Darth Bane. That was just like, okay, yes. I mean, we know Mark Hamill is good at voicing villains. I mean, he's done the Joker for years. So it was nice. It was nice having him being both Luke Skywalker and Darth Bane at the same time.
Yeah, that's just, wow, my head just exploded.
I like Dave
Oh,
Filoni as Embo.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was Dave Filoni.
Yeah, I checked. One of the things I was doing when I was
Kinda makes
rewatching every
sense, actually.
episode, I was going through the end credits to see all the voice actors for each episode, and there's a couple of other little nuanced details I was looking for at each episode too. I'll mention before we end, but the voice actor piece, I thought it was very fascinating, especially to watch those episodes with very few cast members, like the Umbara arc in season 4 with Krell, because pretty much it was the voice actor who does Krell, D. the Bradley Baker for doing all the clones, and then you had Tom Kane because of the narrator at the beginning, and that's it. It's like there's a couple episodes that literally there's like 2 or 3 voice actors on the whole episode, and I think that's kind of neat to watch and see that they're having this whole episode, this whole story being done. It's just like 2 people talking basically back and forth. But that's mainly because of D. Bradley Baker. I thought was very impressive with all the roles he does do in the show, not just the clones and all those characters that encompass the clones, but he shows up in a lot of other voice roles in there. And I think James Arnold Taylor sometimes shows up too, doing multiple roles.
Yeah.
I went to the last Star Wars celebration in 2015, and James Arnold Taylor was kind of like the master of ceremonies, and he hosted his own little talk show where he interviewed the other actors and stuff, and he was really funny and charming, and I love him as Obi-Wan. It's funny because he's done Obi-Wan more than any other actor, so in my mind, he's just as much, if not more, the definitive Obi-Wan than Ewan McGregor, because he's done it for
For so long,
120 episodes or so, whereas Ewan was only in 3 movies.
Yeah,
He's barely in the first one.
He's very impressive too. I remember that show. I think it was like James Arnold Taylor talking to myself or something like that. I forget what they headlined it as, but it was so entertaining. He was such a funny guy. But then you would hear all his different voices come out as he's talking to himself, both Star Wars and all these other like characters and animation that he does. And some stuff I didn't even know he had done until he started doing it on stage. And it was just really, really hilarious. He was a really nice guy too. You could tell he was genuinely happy to be there and be part of the fandom. And Ashley's another great example because my wife even did a couple of those Ahsoka Lives events that Ashley and Dave kind of put on at the celebrations, and she was just a joy to be around, all that enthusiasm, and my wife loved it. She had a great time with her. So
yeah, just to let you know, James
cool.
Arnold Taylor has his own YouTube channel. He's been posting content, and he has his own podcast. So yeah, he pumps up content out in popular culture on a regular basis.
Who doesn't have a podcast these days?
Yeah,
even we do.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible. And by the way,
I know.
my Ben Kenobi will always be Alex Guinness, okay? But I'm old and decrepit, probably. So there you go, okay?
You just like him because his name is Guinness.
Yeah, that must be it, too. Okay. All right. Music, guys. So one of the Star Wars celebrations, I managed to obtain the Clone Wars soundtrack vinyl edition. I have it on vinyl. And most of it, of course, is by Kevin Kiner, who also did the theme music to Rebels. And the back is kind of cool as well. So I posted to Twitter earlier, I think yesterday, so you can check it out. there's something about buying new Star Wars music on vinyl. And I think music works for Star Wars a lot. And you see it in the Clone Wars. What do you guys think? Anything?
I mean, I love the soundtracks. I don't have them on vinyl, but I don't have anything with which to play vinyl, and vinyl takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I have no opinions on vinyl, but I've always loved the soundtrack for the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I thought the music was it always had a Star Wars feel to a lot of it, and so I always felt like I think Derek mentioned how Clone Wars is really just as important as the movies, and really a lot of the animated Star Wars projects, or at least Clone Wars and Rebels have definitely had some of that gravitas and level as the movies. And I always felt like the score in Clone Wars was very much not much different than when you watch an actual Star Wars film. It still felt like Star Wars. It would strike the right emotional moments and callbacks that you wanted to feel. It had a lot of originality to it, but it also still used some of the John Williams cues where appropriate and blended well. So I always thought that was another essential element to make this feel like Star Wars, and just as important, like you said, as any of the other films. But it definitely had some great memorable moments in there.
I just remember becoming so emotional where one of my favorite characters in Star Wars turns out that he was actually alive, not dead. I remember this to this very day when this fellow returned. Of course, I'm talking about Darth Maul. Anyone? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes. I love it. They just bring back characters from the movies. Hey, did he die back in episode 1? Did he fall down an elevator shaft with being cut in half?
Yeah.
Hey, no body means he's not dead.
Okay. I think I mentioned on another podcast that Star Wars is great. Star Wars has a lot of rules, but it also has a lot of loopholes. Especially the Force. The Force has loopholes.
Yeah. Everything depends. It's supposed to be black and white, but there's still a lot of gray, I must admit, in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well,
Maybe
you mentioned
Iridonians can separate their bottom half the way a lizard can separate its tail when threatened.
No. Mike, you got something to say?
I think some people are still also not necessarily happy about how Maul was brought back, because the explanations were kind of like, you get some people are still, I think, not entirely happy about him being back. Although I love the fact the character's back and they're getting to do a lot more with him, since he was kind of, everyone thought he was going to be the next Vader type character for the prequels, and then he was gone after one movie. So, it is great that he, and even along the lines of Count Dooku, a lot of people didn't. I mean, they loved Christopher Lee, of course, being in the films and portraying the character, but a lot of people weren't crazy about having that kind of character as far as being the next apprentice. But I really like what the Clone Wars has done both for Maul and for Dooku, as far as the character evolutions and what they're involved with, and kind of getting a little bit more behind the scenes on what's motivating them, and that you don't really get out of the films. I know Derek mentioned that too. Is the prequels were 2 to 2.5 hour films, and they had a lot of story to cover, especially episode 3, and you don't get the full appreciation of a lot of different things without these longer form series to be able to draw out those stories for the characters and those arcs. And I think that's a great benefit to Clone Wars. Not only that, but its legacy too, that in all the other products we now have in Star Wars canon, including the later animated series, a lot of that's all been seeded with stuff that was started in the Clone Wars. Even our live action Disney Plus shows that are now starting off with, of course, Mandalorian being a huge hit. But that one's got a lot of legacy elements that started in Clone Wars involving it, including the Mandalorians themselves, as far as their current, defining in canon.
Of course, because you have, of course, the Death Watch, and we have the history of Mandalore. This is amazing, right? So I'm hearing you, Mike, and I agree with you. It's amazing. And I think also you have these characters that's introduced in the Clone Wars, and you could say they're supporting actors or supporting characters, but they go off and they have their own books written about them, like Ventress, right? The Dark Disciple. It's interesting that Star Wars is such a big galaxy with so many stories that can be told. And
I agree that Maul's resurrection was a little silly, but I really did love that they brought him back, because it looked like before the movie came out, it looked like he was going to be the next Vader. He had this amazing visual look. He was so cool and so badass. And killing him in the first one was such a waste. So it's really great that they were able to walk that back and bring him back, because what they did with him after that was so great. I love the fact that even though he's this horrible villain, he's also this pathetic loser who just can never win. And his entire life is just destined for failure. And no matter what he does, it never works out. And he just dies this, lonely, pathetic death in the middle of the desert with his old nemesis. His arc was wonderful, and it was so cool the way it stretched from Clone Wars to Rebels. So I'm really glad they brought him back. It's just a shame that the way they did it was a little silly.
Listen, he didn't have a leg to stand on. Okay,
that is true. That is true. But and this isn't me saying this. This is Frappers Jr. repeating what Dave Filoni told him. Is Maul is like the embodiment of the myth of Sisyphus. So he's the guy who keeps pushing the boulder up the rock, up the hill, and then as soon as he gets to the top, it falls back down. And that's his story arc. He pushes the boulder up the hill, gets to the top, everything rolls back down. He has to start all over again.
He's dealing with forces that he cannot control. In this case, gravity. Right? So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, that too. Yes.
And actually, I like the fact that Maul was supposedly killed off in the Phantom Menace, being this big, baddie guy that, oh my god, this is the villain. He doesn't say much. He's so scary. To me, that speaks a lot about the switch-ups, right? The contrast that, hey, he just got killed in his first major fight scene or second major fight scene in the movie. Oh, that's amazing. I like the fact that Star Wars does that, right? You see the same thing in Snoke, right? So, in Last Jedi, but.
Yeah. So you're not telling me that Snoke's coming back in an animated series down the road, are we?
That'd be interesting, but
Ooh,
probably
that could be interesting.
There were like 10 of him in jars, so you could bring one of them
that's
back.
true.
Cool.
Well, I will say
there was
that
10 of them in one jar.
that's true, and Maul was also good too coming back, because it really gives a good foil to Obi-Wan as well, with a lot of personal history, and given the mess that Maul does to Kenobi throughout season 5, it's like it's interesting for Kenobi to have that kind of past issues he has to still wrestle and deal with and overcome. Because some will say the stories about, Ahsoka and Rex, and even Anakin to an extent, we're seeing his growth with Padawan. But Kenobi is a very important character to this series too. And I really like what they did for his character via having Maul back. That was a very interesting set of situations that he gets weaved into.
Yeah, it was the Star Wars love story of, Obi-Wan having his heart crushed. It's terrible. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like Star Wars and romance because it never works out, right? Romances in Star Wars, no, not so much. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like being real life, but I digress. Okay. What do you think the legacy of the Clone Wars is to Star Wars, but not only Star Wars, to the greater pop culture of our times?
Ooh, we could talk about the Emmys it won.
What Emmys? Wait, yes. How many Emmys did it win?
I believe it was 2. Well, I believe it won 1, and I think David Tennant doing the voice of a character won 1. I think.
Interesting.
But I don't have it in front of me though.
Yeah, I know it won a bunch as well. Of course, I hit the wrong link, and yeah. That one from 2003 actually won some too, but okay, I digress. Yeah, let's see. It won a lot. It's
that was at least season 5 that I remember.
Yeah, so it won Outstanding Special Class Animated Program, the 40th Daytime Emmys Award for, let's see, that's the series, and for the performers, David Tennant won as Hung Young. I can't say the name right, but of course there was like lots of nominations. But the fact of the matter, it broke new ground, right? And to me, from a technical standpoint, doing CGI like they did on the Clone Wars is the first time I saw an animation series of that quality. You think about that. It premiered in 2008. That's 12 years ago. Tech moves really, really fast. So when we look back at it, it's going, oh, that animation is not that great. But for the time period, it was the best thing going.
That's because Lucas threw so much money at it that he was running at a loss, but he didn't care.
Yes.
Well, mean, if anyone saw Beast Wars back in like the late 90s, that was pretty. I mean, the graphics aren't as good as they would be now, but that was pretty epic for a CGI show and for something that was geared towards kids. So I definitely see the evolution in the technology. It's great, but as much as I love Star Wars, it's not the only thing of this kind of quality that we've had in the last 25-ish years.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm not trying to put down any other franchise or series.
No, I
but
were.
To me, it's just this Clone Wars series is just amazing in the sense of how it's drawn, how it's told the stories. Sometimes it works, mostly it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Let me ask you this, guys. In the next couple of months, we're going to wake up to the realization there won't be no more Clone Wars episodes that's going to be released. How does that make you feel?
Very sad.
I'm still in denial. I still think they're going to bring it back eventually for more.
It says the final season, Mike.
They said that in season 5. They said that in season 6.
No. They called that the Lost Missions. They never said final season until now.
No, the next will be the classified missions.
Yeah. I mean, I would love it if they did more, but I don't think they are. See, the problem is they're too expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
Lucas spent so much money on them because he wasn't doing it for profit. He was doing it because he wanted to make them. That's why Clone Wars got promptly canceled with the Disney purchase, because it just cost too much money. And they only went back and did these as a selling point for Disney Plus, and just as like a gift to the fans and a gift to Filoni, because he's the big honcho now, and he always had to be in his bonnet to finish it out.
And I noticed too that the season 7 graphics, because having just watched season 5 and season 6, where it's definitely getting revved up, and then watching season 7, I feel like these look even more polished and sharper and better than those seasons did. Or at least that's what I was feeling watching it. But I was kind of curious, because I know with Rebels they tended to do the budget cuts in order to do things on the cheaper side. So the graphics, while they still look pretty good, they're not quite as as you said, Derek, expensive. I was curious, did they do the caliber and level on this that they did originally back when Lucas was running the show, or is this still done on a cheaper side? I was kind of curious. I didn't know if anyone had actually gotten any info on that, or if anything's come out about it.
Well, many of the episodes of this final season was planned and were half completed back years ago. At one of the celebrations, they showed 4 of them, where it was just before the animation was finished. It was the stick version of it. I'm not sure what the technical term was, like the Bad Batch
previs.
Previs, and it was quite interesting just for the story's sake of it. So I'm sure they saved money that way by using products that was already near completion. But
yeah, we watched those as part of our rewatch too. My kids were asking me questions like, why does Crystal Crisis on Utapau look the way it does? And I had to explain a little bit about the behind the scenes and how this stuff gets made. But they still enjoyed it. Then they were kind of sad when we went back to regular ones. It's like, I wanted to see I forget what they called them, the action figure episodes.
I am kind of disappointed that series of episodes wasn't finished for this last season as well, but I guess I can't be too picky.
We are getting
new Star Wars.
Crisis.
Yeah, Crystal Crisis was hilarious as far as the banter between the characters, but I mean, Bad Batch, I get why they probably focused on Bad Batch, because of it being more focused on Rex, and they're trying to make this last season kind of the Rex and Ahsoka's main storylines. I mean, Maul's going to be a part of this at the end, obviously too. And I kind of feel like it would have been nice to get the Son of Dathomir that they made into a comic book, because they had that story already written too. we did read that to the kids. Actually, I figured out how to cast it onto my TV from my iPad so I could read the comic book to the family. So that was kind of fun family time.
Well, for that matter, it would have been nice to have seen Dark Disciple on screen as well, but
Yeah. Now that I did not take the time to read that
picky.
one. I didn't take the time to read that to the family. Yeah.
Yeah. That one gets a bit dark.
Well,
Plus, that would have been 8 episodes, and that would have been like, the whole season of what they were going to do.
I mean, like I said, I'm trying not to be greedy, but I would not have minded if they went like 22 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I would have definitely had no problem with that.
Well, guys, do we need more Clone Wars, or is this chapter closed?
Well, they can always do books and comics.
That is true.
Yeah, and I think like we said, that you're talking about legacy earlier, Joel. We definitely know that this seeded stuff for Rebels, and it seeded a lot of other things, across Star Wars. I mean, you had some really, I can go season by season and talk about some big momentous things that they did as far as Star Wars canon is concerned, which to me still has room to grow. And as I was watching this, because we know we've got the High Republic stuff coming soon for Star Wars, I was thinking about some references that get made in the Clone Wars and to stuff in the past. And I'm like, oh, look, there's some good setups of some stuff we could see play out either in High Republic or some other content down the road that was, it was almost like the episode 4 moment you mentioned. Obi-Wan drops that line about the Clone Wars and you're like, well, what's that? I have no idea what that's about. And there's a couple of things within the 7 seasons that get mentioned and you're like, oh, well, that's an interesting event or an interesting history for like a planet or something. I wonder if we'd ever get to see more about that. So, there's a lot that this could still branch off into without having to have more Clone Wars itself.
Yeah. Guys, what was your favorite character in the Clone Wars? I said mine is Hondo because I'm completely Team Hondo. And I have it on the back right now. But I have a
Jar Jar Binks.
No.
Ahsoka.
I mean, I'm a staunch Yoda fan, so any opportunity to see more Yoda is great.
I have to.
Yeah, that was one of the problems I have with the show. Yoda and Palpatine are my 2 favorite characters in all of Star Wars. I was so mad that they only did 4 Yoda, or no, 5. They did 1 at the beginning and 4 at the end in season 6. Why didn't we get more Yoda episodes? It would have been awesome to have seen him, every few episodes. Like, give him Yoda-centric episodes once a season or something.
Yeah, they came up short there. Yeah. Yeah, a bit green with envy. Oh, well. Yeah. Ashoka is an interesting character because I hated her in the first season, but by about season 3, season 4, yeah, she grew on me to the point where I actually cared about her character, and by like season 5, I'm the biggest Ashoka fan. There you go. Yeah,
oh yeah,
they got me. They got me. Okay.
Eventually. Yeah. She's the annoying kid, and eventually she becomes not the annoying kid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'm playing season 1
wiser
on
than her
mute.
master.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She knows when to walk away. No.
Exactly. That too.
I'm playing season 1 on mute right now, and I forgot about her tube top. It's like, once they got rid of the tube top and gave her a proper costume, that's when she got good.
Yeah, I think the first episode where that happens is actually season 3 when she discovers, and that, I think Joel mentioned the gray. We talked about black and white and then gray. He was making a comment about something else in regard, not this, but I think story-wise that was another interesting part of the Clone Wars was the gray, especially in season 3 you start to see a lot of that. They show the politics and they show a lot of the different sides of this war, that there's heroes on both sides when they bring in Lux and like kind of that little love interest for Ahsoka, and that's about the time where she got, I think it's that episode where she started having the more mature looking outfit as well. And I know she stopped using Sky Guy, I think, after season 1 as a nickname for Anakin. But Snips, I realized Snips stayed apparently the whole series all the way through to at least season 5. At the end of season 5, it was still being used.
That's so wizard right there.
Also, that's when she got her second Shoto lightsaber. She got a lot cooler with 2 lightsabers too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to pull off. It's hard to pull off 2 blades like that, but she's very good at it.
The Clone Wars. What makes it so special? It is special to us, but what makes it so special?
It's Star Wars. It's more Star Wars. I mean, I try not to be greedy, but I don't say no to more Star Wars.
What do you think,
I
Dirk?
don't know.
It was the Star Wars after the movies ended. I already said this at the top, but the movies were done. This was it. This was the number one Star Wars product. This was as important as the movies, and this is what filled in the holes of the prequels and made the prequels better in retrospect.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well, this in the books, but the books don't count anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I love the books just as much, but these are moving pictures.
Mike, what makes this series so special, in your opinion?
Actually, I think what both Carrie and Derek said is kind of would be my own view on it as well. It was the first of its kind for Star Wars. Well, I'll take that back. We did have droids in the Ewoks animated series back in the 80s, but I don't want to probably remember those too much. So
I have them on.
I own them too. Maybe I'll show them to my kids and I'll see what they think of them. But yeah, this was the first of its kind, and I loved I'm still a little sore about the canon change because I like the micro series as well. In fact, from an origin standpoint, I like seeing Anakin become not a Padawan, become a Jedi Knight. 3PO gets his gold plating, and Asajj's origins a little bit better fleshed out. So I like the micro series as well. But this was definitely a show on its own, new caliber. It was the first for Star Wars with the 3D animation, at least in that big of a sense. And it was also pushing the envelope forward with tech like Lucas likes to do. But it really had great stories. That was at the end of the day. It had great writing, great stories, great set of characters. And it really did fill in those gaps that Carrie and Derek mentioned. But it also it kind of did what the Star Wars films originally always did for us. It captured that imagination for young people as well as even older ones. I know there was a lot of people who felt like Joel did, that this was animated. This is for kids. It's not really meant for adults. And I found when I started watching it, it was 2008, so I would have been in my mid-20s at that point. I was, and interestingly enough, I think that first arc with both Yoda on Ambush and then the Malevolence arc, even though those were rougher episodes at the beginning, I really kind of liked the sense of adventure that they had with the characters, with Anakin and his troops going off when they were talking about the backstory with Plo Koon and Ahsoka. They were adding in those little bits that the Star Wars films used to do when they would talk a little bit of dialogue or a little throwaway line here, and you're just imagining, well, what's the story behind that? And it just kind of gets you all excited about all these different rabbit holes that you could go down. And that's exactly what Kenobi did with that line in Episode 4 about the Clone Wars. Back then everyone was like, well, what's the Clone Wars? What's that about? And everyone just starts, guessing. I don't know if anybody ever guessed it was going to end up being what we got revealed, but I do think that's where that specialness is with it, and because it's part of Star Wars and it's a first for certain things, but in some ways it's a continuation of that legacy of Star Wars, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah, well said. Go ahead, Kerr.
And the thing I was going to point out about at least the Tartakovsky series is that at least in my head, there is very little of that series that gets directly overwritten by Clone Wars. I mean, you can kind of see where things might fit if you really, really want to invest that much brainpower into it. And the thing I liked about the Tartakovsky series is how it fed directly into Episode 3. So we haven't seen that part of the kidnapping of Palpatine yet. So
yeah, my guess is we probably won't.
we may not. Who knows?
But I agree with you. I felt the same way. It doesn't overwrite, really, for the most part, it doesn't overwrite anything that later Clone Wars or the current canon did. So in my head canon, it's still a part of it until Siege of Mandalore, where I'm sure it will change. But
until they tell me differently. I both series work in my head together.
With me, what makes this special, and Mike articulated a lot of my own thoughts, is the fact that for several years, the Clone Wars managed to bridge the gap between a whole new younger generation and made the series attractable to people like me who, I was, around when the first one came out. I was really, really young, but I grew up with Star Wars. And I can find a lot of joy and a lot of value in the Clone Wars, despite the fact that the first 2 seasons, it was there to hook a whole new younger generation into it. I'm going to see a lot of merit to it. That's what makes that so special to me. So maybe it's a humbling experience from my part, because sometimes I can be stubborn and say, I don't like this. Oh, this is for kids. And or I just dismiss things, and then suddenly I'm crying when Darth Maul comes back. I love it.
Aww. Poor Joel.
There we go. Any last thoughts, folks?
Nope. I think so.
Yeah, we should also point out some of the many wonderful characters that were introduced because of Clone Wars. Ahsoka, of course, Mother Talzin, Savage Opress, Hondo Ohnaka, Cad Bane. We never mentioned Cad Bane. He's wonderful.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I love Cad Bane.
And Boo.
Yeah.
And even Boba Fett getting some more flushed out story too. Although I'm still sad we're not going to see exactly what the end point was for him in that series, but we got that too.
Oh, what's the name of the monster in the first season or two that Rampage curse on?
Zillo Beast.
Yeah, the Zillo Beast.
The Zillo Beast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I will defend Mace Windu as well, because everyone likes to kind of crap on him. But I think when you look at the series, I don't know about Dark Disciple. I have to remember the characterization of that. I haven't read it in a while. But other than the final arc of season 5, where the council's putting Ahsoka on trial and that sort of stuff, I actually saw his character as very uplifting of the Jedi moral code and the compass for all the characters in general. Like on the Zillo Beast episode, he's the one trying to tell everybody not to destroy the monster, and he's the one trying to fight for him. So I mean, it's an interesting perspective when you look at these characters, and people take quick snapshots from the films, but you really do get to see those details flushed out in this series. The only extra little bit of trivia I would say that I'll add is one thing I was looking for. In the original films, they always tend to have, I think the Empire always had the green laser blast, and the Rebels were using red. In the prequels, they kind of flipped it on its head for episode 1, and I believe it was the Republic that's using the green still, because obviously they become the Empire, and then the enemies are using red, like the droids in episode 1. By the time we get to episodes 2 and 3, we start to finally get other color laser blasts, like blue for the clones, and then there was a brief bit of purple from Dooku's like sentry droids following him on his speeder in episode 2. We saw the return of that in Clone Wars, because they ended up ditching, I think, green for the most part. And all the droids continue to use red, and then all the clones are using blue. And I noticed they tend to do that in all the episodes with whoever was the good guys in that episode. They tend to have blue, and the bad guys are red. So I guess you can kind of keep track of the action. But I noticed in the season 4 arc, I'll have to rewatch it again, season 5 with the younglings, when Hondo's involved. They at one point the pirates are attacking them, and so obviously they're the bad guys. I believe they have red colored laser blast at that point. In the next episode, they team up with them to help defend against, I think, the Separatist. I believe at that point all their weapons are shooting blue laser blast, if I remember correctly.
Well, okay. So I could actually maybe explain that because this is supposed to be a show for kids, and stun setting is usually blue. You could theorize that all of the non-droid characters are actually just getting stunned and not killed.
Very enlightening.
I never paid attention to the colors before, so that analysis is very interesting.
That's great. All right, guys, let's close the doors so we can get on with our
One more
lives.
thing.
But
we didn't mention Mortis.
Of course, the Mortis art, which I just rewatched last week.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
which one's better, Mortis?
Were both hugely important to the franchise. I mean, they really rewrote what we knew about the Force and whether there's a guiding intelligence behind the Force.
No, it was just a dream. It was just a dream.
It was all a dream, Eric.
So yeah, those were hugely important stories to the franchise.
That's true. I love the Mortis and the Yoda arcs because we get Liam Neeson back as Qui-Gon Jinn, which is awesome.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a lot there, man. We can talk about this for an hour or two for the rest of the day, but life intervenes. So
yes.
Let's close our doors and get on with our lives. This show is released as a podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe today. Please, subscribe. Really, subscribe. It's
free.
It's free. The podcast is available on most apps, including Apple Podcasts and Google Play. And YouTube, subscribe to YouTube. That's something we've been doing for the last couple of months. Put on the background, do housework. You don't have to watch our lovely faces. You just use it as an audio means. So there's that. we also have a Discord server where I post a lot of news stories, and sometimes there's conversations, sometimes there isn't. News has not been that much right now that's relevant to pop culture. So
Just things being canceled.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. So it's not very active this week, but it will become active soon enough. We have 3 social media channels. We have Twitter and Instagram, which I do. Twitter is more focused on news and industry news, that is, and sci-fi. Instagram's more focused on food, drink, anything restaurant related. Of course, yeah, that's kind of slow right now. And we have a Facebook page managed by Derek, which is on Geek News. Derek, you're doing a great job, man.
Thank you.
Anytime. If you want to contact us, our email is management@scifipubcast.space. Please leave a positive review wherever you find this show. It helps us grow our little community. Carrie, what's your Twitter address?
You can find me at Carrie Blackfire42. That's KERI Blackfire42.
And Derek, what's your Twitter address?
I'm at Derek J. Beebe.
Hey, Mike, how can people find you?
Well, the easiest way is I hang out on the SciFi Pubcast Discord under the username Erasure, so you can find me there. Otherwise, when it comes to Twitter and Facebook and all that, while I have them, I really don't frequent them much. So you're better off finding me on the Discord server and have some good conversations.
Very cool. My Twitter address is at Joel, Joel_Welch, WELCH. It's closing time. Please take care and be safe. Make it home and stay home. And wash your hands. And stay sane too. And take care of your mental health. And eat white. Yes. And try to do some exercises. Fitness is important as well. And spend some quality time.
Don't touch your face.
And spend some quality time with your family if you have family. And or you like me and I just drink coffee. Okay. See you next time. Bye now. Cheers.
Bye.
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 Music provided courtesy of Logan Rathbone. Podcast logo by Jea Rhea. Copyrighted Joe Welch. Listen responsibly. And we can't wait for your next visit to our fine establishment. Cheers.